In order to cure Liu Ryan's illness, I painfully abandoned my dream of scientific research. Just as I arrived breathlessly at the door of the private room, I heard her best friend, Li Xia, teasingly say, "You've been pretending to be sick for a whole year. Aren't you tired of it yet?" Liu Ryan chuckled, seeing He Kong running around all day, desperately trying to earn money for my medicine. It's so amusing. I stepped forward in disbelief, peering into the private room. A group of women was gathered there, their laughter and chatter never ceasing. Each of them was dressed in lavish attire, exuding elegance and sophistication. The most prominent seat on the sofa was occupied by a woman. She lazily tilted her head, one leg elegantly crossed over the other, her fair and slender fingers, delicate yet defined, gently holding a delicate glass. As my gaze traveled upward, what entered my sight was a face I knew all too well. She was my girlfriend, Liu Ryan. But at this moment, she no longer had the frail and sickly appearance. Wearing a white LV dress, looking vibrant and graceful. In that instant, I froze in place, my hands clenched involuntarily, so tightly that my whole body trembled. Then another friend curiously asked, "Pretending to be sick? She's perfectly fine. Why would Ryan pretend to be sick in front of her boyfriend?" Li Xia laughed. "We just wanted to see if He Kong would stay with her for more than a year, if she was both poor and sick. So we made a huge bet. Had Ryan make up a story about having a heart condition, one that required an incredibly expensive special medicine, 6,000 per box, and she needed a box every few days, making He Kong spend money on her nonstop." Zironu asked in confusion. 6,000? That's not expensive at all. Li Xia sneered. "Nonsense. You think the whole world is like you? Throwing 50 grand around without blinking? That kid is just a poor student." Zironu suddenly understood. "Ah, so you were really making things difficult for him. Ha ha ha. Hey he. Ryan, seeing that boy working himself to the bone to earn money for you, doesn't it give you a great sense of accomplishment? My Ryan is truly charming." These mocking and excited voices pierced straight into my heart, tearing my insides apart, twisting in excruciating pain. Then someone asked Liu Ryan, "Giggle, the 1-year bet is almost up. Are you going to come clean or keep it a secret? If you reveal the truth, you'll win the bet. But if your little boyfriend finds out the truth, he'll probably hate you to death, right? If you don't tell him and continue pretending to be sick, you two can still stay together." Through the half-open door, I saw Liu Ryan's fingertips tremble slightly. After a brief pause, I heard her voice, slow, indifferent, laced with a mocking smile. "Hate, love? He Kong is just an ordinary poor man. When the time comes, I'll just give him some extra money as compensation. I will win the bet. That is the most important thing." I stared blankly at the familiar face that I had cherished for a whole year, desperately searching her cold, indifferent eyes for even the slightest trace of emotion or reluctance. But clearly, it was nothing more than my own foolish, wishful thinking. Inside the private room, it was as warm as spring. Laughter and merriment filled the air. I stood silently in the cold darkness, the dazzling light from within stabbing painfully into my eyes. I no longer listened to their words, drifting numbly through the hallway, walking through the heavy snow back to Liu Ryan's spacious apartment in the city center. I still remember the first time I visited Liu Ryan's home. It was shortly after I agreed to be with her. Looking at the luxurious interior, I couldn't help but marvel. "Liu Ryan, your house is huge." At that time, Liu Ryan leaned against the wall, hearing my words. She curled her lips with a trace of mockery. Then she raised her head and corrected me coldly. "This is my relative's house. They lent it to me. Don't overthink it." I was still in shock that Liu Ryan had such a wealthy relative. When she spoke again, cutting off my thoughts. "He Kong, there's something I've never told you. I have a congenital heart condition. My sleep is very light at night. I couldn't stand the noise in the girls' dormitory. That's why I moved out. Hearing this, my mind went blank. At that time, I foolishly asked her, "Is it difficult to treat?" She lowered her gaze, looking at me, her eyes playful. Yet her tone was filled with an exaggerated seriousness, and I need to take medicine. A very expensive kind. So, when my living expenses aren't enough, I might need you to support me. That won't be a problem, right? She asked me this, as if testing again and again whether I would leave her. I thought for a moment, then shook my head without hesitation. Back then, I was still young and impulsive, blinded by love, unaware of the hardships of life. It's okay. We can just save a little together. I smiled at her. Liu Ryan, I like you, and I want to face all difficulties together with you. At that time, Liu Ryan was momentarily stunned. Then she smiled again. She leaned down and hugged me and said, "He Kong, you're amazing." And so life went on like that. Later, I finally understood a line from a movie. Having an illness but no medicine is fate. Having medicine but not being able to afford it is a disaster. Liu Ryan's heart disease would always relapse. She said only a special imported drug worked for her, but that medicine cost $6,000 per box. To save money to buy it for her, I worked hard as a tutor, took on all kinds of side jobs, kept winning scholarships nonstop. It had been a long time since I last took a proper bus ride, bought new clothes, or gotten a nice pair of shoes. Even when I occasionally went out to eat hot pot, I had to calculate exactly how much I would spend, how many plates of meat I could order. But no matter how hard I worked to earn money, I could never keep up with the speed at which Liu Ryan consumed her medicine. Living like this, it was indeed a little humiliating and difficult, but I kept telling myself over and over, it's okay. As long as I have the person I love by my side, as long as we work hard together, life will gradually get better. But only now do I realize that my concern and love for Liu Ryan was nothing more than a ridiculous joke. When I pressed my fingerprint to unlock the door, I was already drenched. The 20 yuan sneakers I bought from Pinduoduo had come apart at the seams. The fine snow had soaked through my socks, freezing my feet numb. Before I even had time to wipe my feet, my phone rang. It was a call from my senior. "He Kong, where are you? Weren't you going to sell me your family heirloom jade? You haven't arrived yet?" It was only then that I suddenly remembered. Right, that was the reason I went to that high-end club today. Yesterday, Liu Ryan's heart disease had flared up again. I was completely panicked at the time, but when I checked my WeChat balance, my Alipay balance, added in the money I earned from tutoring, and the little savings I had painstakingly set aside last week, no matter how I calculated, it still wasn't enough to buy a single box of her medicine. No one knew how tormenting last night was for me. I couldn't stop blaming myself. Why was I so poor? Why couldn't I earn more money? Why couldn't I be like those rich second-generation heirs who could casually pull out huge sums of money whenever they wanted? Why couldn't I make sure that Liu Ryan's purse always had enough of that special medicine so that her heart disease would never relapse again? After struggling for an entire night, I could only stare with red-rimmed eyes as I prepared to sell the only heirloom my grandmother left me, our family's jade, to my senior. Thinking about it now, it's almost laughable. If I hadn't done this, I never would have known that my girlfriend wasn't actually sick at all. That she was, in fact, a wealthy heiress, living a carefree life, indulging in luxury at an extravagant club. Sorry, senior, I'm not selling the heirloom jade anymore. I blinked, and a single droplet of melted ice slipped from my eyelashes, falling onto the expensive wool carpet, leaving behind a cold, damp stain. On the other end of the phone, my senior paused for a moment, his usually gentle voice suddenly turning serious. "What happened to you?" I'm telling you now, if something's wrong, you better not hide it from me. Or else, you don't have to sell the jade if you don't want to. I don't even like it that much anyway. I'll still give you the money. Just consider it a loan. Pay me back whenever you can. But don't do anything stupid, okay? Hearing his concern, something inside me softened. I wiped my face and murmured, "It's nothing. I just don't need the money anymore, that's all." My senior let out a relieved sigh, then spent a while longer reminding me to take care of myself before finally hanging up. Fang Yuan said, "He Kong, if anything happens, you have to tell me." I made a small sound of acknowledgement, but his sourness suddenly welled up in my chest. Even someone I had only met a few times cared about me this much. Yet my girlfriend, she had watched me suffer, watched me agonize over her, and took pleasure in it. I stepped inside the apartment, opened the drawer beneath the TV cabinet, and stared blankly at the rows of medicine boxes inside. They were all empty. Not a single pill remained. Not even an empty blister pack. Looking back, I was the fool. I had never once seen Liu Ryan take her medicine. Never once saw the pills themselves. She must have thrown them all away long ago, then lied to me about taking them, just to trick me into working even harder to buy more. I picked up one of the boxes. A thin, weightless little thing, so much lighter than the 6,000 yuan I had spent to buy it. For a poor student like me, every single box had been painfully earned. I could still vividly recall the price I had paid for each one. This box, I had run 25 1-kilometer sprints in a single week for someone. Blisters forming on my feet, the taste of blood in my throat just to earn enough. This box, I had braved the freezing wind, walking from the south of the city to the north, rushing between tutoring gigs, teaching until my voice was hoarse, just to scrape together the money for it. This box was bought with the scholarship I earned after burning the midnight oil, sleeping only 3 hours a day, and the others. Suddenly, I couldn't remember. My mind felt muddled, lost in a haze. My eyes brimmed with mist. My nose ached unbearably, and tears began to fall in heavy drops. Liu Ryan was a rich heiress. She never understood the struggles of making money. She treated love as a game, toying with my sincerity as she pleased. Suddenly, my phone rang again. It was my advisor. "He Kong, I reviewed your research presentation from last week. It was a complete mess. What's going on with you?" Last week, I had poured all my energy into making money for Liu Ryan's medicine, so I had completely neglected my research. In the end, I forgot the fundamental duty I had as a student. I hurriedly apologized. "I'm sorry, Professor Shen. I promise it won't happen again." My advisor, Shen Wanqing, was a composed and gentle professor. She was silent for a moment. Then suddenly, in a firm tone, she changed the subject. "You've been crying." I was about to deny it, but Shen Wanqing sighed. "No need to explain. Let me guess. It's about your girlfriend again, isn't it?" On the other end of the call, her voice was filled with disappointment. "He Kong, you're one of my most promising students. Smart, motivated, eager to learn. But unfortunately, your brain is useless when it comes to love. You're a complete fool when it comes to relationships." I gripped my phone tightly. Then, with a bitter determination, I said, "Not anymore. She's not my girlfriend anymore. She lied to me." Shen Wanqing chuckled, her calm tone carrying a sense of having seen through everything long ago. "Good. Consider it a lesson learned. He Kong, let me tell you something. A woman might deceive you, but the knowledge you've gained never will. You were even willing to give up your PhD prospects for that girlfriend of yours. That was truly the height of stupidity." I was wrong. Professor Shen. After a brief hesitation, I clenched my teeth and tentatively asked, "Professor Shen, the study abroad exchange program in the UK, can I still apply for it?" Shen Wanqing's voice remained indifferent. "Didn't you say you weren't going?" I already submitted someone else's name. In that instant, my heart plummeted. But then I heard Shin Wanqing continue. However, I'll try to secure an extra spot for you. He Kong, you have outstanding academic talent. You should aim to be a mountain. A great river, not a rootless weed clinging to a woman's side. Listening to her sincere and heartfelt words, I felt a burning sensation in my eyes. Choking back a sob, I responded. Only now did I truly understand her well-intentioned guidance. It's just that preparing to go abroad now, time will be a little tight. You need to act quickly. And also, which batch are you planning to leave with? There was a moment of silence. Then, amidst the bitterness in my heart, a firm idea took root. Without hesitation, I spoke. Professor, I want to leave on the 9th of next month. That was the day before the end of Liu Ryan's so-called one-year bet. Those who betray true love must swallow 1,000 needles. That bet, Liu Ryan would not win, and I would never let her win. Before I left, I wanted her to feel it. The same kind of soul-crushing pain that comes when one is at the peak of arrogance. After hanging up the call, I broke down and cried alone, releasing every ounce of grievance and sorrow in my heart. When exhaustion took over, I curled up on the sofa, drifting into a hazy sleep. But even in my dreams, they were filled with sorrow. The past with Liu Ryan replayed itself. The school library, where we once sat together, our fingers secretly brushing against each other's between study sessions, catching each other's gaze with smiles full of warmth, choosing to take the subway to save money, swaying together in the crowded train, me losing my balance, and falling straight into Liu Ryan's arms, where she caught me in a tight embrace. At the end of the dream, I saw it again. The first time Liu Ryan kissed me, those beautiful, delicate eyes, she said, "He Kong, I love you." I was shaken awake by someone gently nudging me. As I opened my eyes, the first thing I saw was Liu Ryan's anxious face. Outside, the sun was shining brightly. Liu Ryan had changed back into her simple sportswear. When she saw me wake up, she let out a small sigh of relief. Had a nightmare? She gently brushed her fingertips against my cheek and sighed. "Why were you crying?" I stared at Liu Ryan, unsure how to respond, looking at her bathed in the warm sunlight. It was still difficult to reconcile this gentle girl with the cold, emotionless woman from last night's private room. What was I supposed to say? Should I confront her about her flawless act? How she had deceived me, playing sick to gain all my sympathy? Or should I mock myself for being a complete fool? For having nothing, yet still loving her with everything I had? After half a minute, I swallowed all the resentment and injustice burning inside me, and simply replied with an indifferent smile. "It's nothing." After all, the time for final reckoning had yet to come. Liu Ryan let out a sigh of relief. When she spoke again, there was a hint of genuine concern in her tone. "Why didn't you go back to your room? You just fell asleep on the sofa like this. Your hands and feet are ice cold. You didn't even cover yourself with a blanket." She sighed as she spoke, then stood up to find one. I reached out and grabbed her wrist. "No need. I'm just a little tired." Liu Ryan smiled helplessly, her voice lowering into a gentle coax. "All right, then hold me. Let's go back to bed and sleep properly, okay?" I noticed the dumbbell charm on her bracelet and couldn't help but laugh. I had never paid attention to these small details before. With a mocking smile, I said, "Aren't you supposed to have a heart condition, Liu Ryan? Did you forget? You're not supposed to carry heavy things." Liu Ryan froze for a second, then quickly shook her head, trying to cover up her slip. "It's fine. Carrying it occasionally won't hurt." I cut off her pathetic excuse and spoke softly. "Liu Ryan, last night I had a dream. I dreamed that you weren't sick at all, that you were rich, that you had everything except your love for me." Liu Ryan said nothing. Only her breath hitched for a moment. I pretended not to notice her reaction, lifting my head, putting on an innocent face as I asked, "So, Liu Ryan, would you ever lie to me?" "Never. This time, Liu Ryan answered without a moment's hesitation. After thinking for a second, she suddenly added, "You're my boyfriend. If I lied to anyone, it would never be you." A sharp, suffocating pain spread through my chest, but I still smiled. I said, I understand. Liu Ryan, I gave you one last chance to be honest with me, and you chose not to take it." As the date on my plane ticket approached, I started counting down. For days before departure, Shen Wanqing informed me that all my documents had been approved. 3 days before departure, I rushed to get everything done, finally getting my student visa before the office closed. While sitting on the subway, heading back to campus, I suddenly received a call from Liu Ryan. "He Kong, I got someone to buy you the fresh milk cake from the shop in the North District that you love. I left it downstairs at your dormitory. Don't forget to pick it up." Her voice was warm as she reminded me. Then, noticing the background behind me wasn't my dorm, she hesitated. "You're not at school?" "Yeah." I smiled casually and tilted my phone's camera slightly upward, carefully hiding the thick stack of documents resting on my lap. I went to the city library to borrow a couple of books for my major. On the evening of the second to last day, I finished packing my suitcase in the dorm. Just as I closed my suitcase, Liu Ryan suddenly sent me a message. "He Kong, come downstairs." I thought for a moment, then decided to go. These past few days, Liu Ryan hadn't once mentioned feeling unwell. Perhaps she was simply tired of keeping up the act. After all, the bet was almost over. There was no need for her to continue pretending in front of me. Liu Ryan was already waiting downstairs. When she saw me, she reached out and adjusted my hat for me, then smiled as she spoke. "Didn't you say last time that you wanted to go to the amusement park? But you were too busy with experiments to go. My roommate gave me 2 tickets. Let's go now." So suddenly, I hesitated. "There's no rush. There will be plenty of chances to go in the future." Liu Ryan paused for a second, then shook her head with a smile. In a soft voice, she said, "It's different." "Why is it different?" We both knew the answer. Once the bet ended, I would no longer be the one standing beside her. The amusement park at night had a beauty of its own. The Ferris wheel, the carousel, the rafting ride, the go-karts. We tried them all, enjoying ourselves to the fullest. Just as we were about to leave, Liu Ryan suddenly tugged on my sleeve. "Don't go yet. Look." She pointed. "There's a fireworks show." I froze for a moment, then slowly lifted my head. Right at that moment, a burst of blue fireworks soared into the sky, blooming into dazzling clusters against the deep night. Boom! One after another, the fireworks exploded, illuminating the castle in a mesmerizing display. The blue lights reflected in our eyes. Liu Ryan turned toward me, her beautiful gaze curving into a smile. "You said last time that you wanted to see blue fireworks. Who would have thought we'd be so lucky? We come to the amusement park just once, and here they are." I smiled, but my fingers tightened around the brochure in my hand. It clearly stated that there was no fireworks show tonight. And yet, suddenly, there were fireworks. And of all colors, they just happened to be my favorite. I knew Liu Ryan had arranged it. But so what? A touch of sincerity mixed into deception was nothing more than decoration on dung. Completely worthless. So in the end, I said nothing. I kept up the act, pretending not to know a thing. Smiling, I echoed her words. "We're really lucky." On my phone's lock screen, the time shifted to 18 o'clock. This was the final night of the bet. I imported the pre-recorded video file into my email, pressed send, then pulled up the handle of my suitcase, put on my mask, and walked out of the school without hesitation. I didn't look back. At the same time, the antique clock in the Hua mansion let out a deep, solemn chime. It was 6 o'clock in the evening. At this time, He Kong should have just finished class, probably waiting for her at the lecture hall to go have dinner together. For no apparent reason, Liu Ryan suddenly felt a sharp, twisting pain in her otherwise healthy heart. A faint yet piercing pain. The final task was for her to tell He Kong the truth herself. The others, the ones who had made the bet with her, had already drafted the message for her. All she had to do was hit send. Yet, her fingers hovered over the screen, unable to press the button. At first, she had treated this bet as nothing more than a fun game. She had seen too much hypocrisy in life, had never believed in love, and she had been convinced that if she were just an ordinary, sickly, poor girl, He Kong wouldn't have loved her for long. She wanted to know how much of his love was real, how much of it was just an illusion. Scenes of He Kong flashed through her mind. In a small, steam-filled bathroom, she sat on a wooden stool, swinging her legs, playing on her phone, while He Kong stood behind her, one hand holding a hairdryer, the other gently gathering her damp hair, drying it with infinite patience. It was a crisp autumn evening. They were strolling across campus. He Kong had always remembered to bring her a cup of warm rock sugar pear tea. On his birthday, the one and only wish he made, he gave it to her. I hope Liu Ryan stays healthy and happy. Her mind rewound back to the beginning, to that half-truth she had once told him. I have a heart condition, but every heartbeat of mine is loving you. When had the deception changed into something else? Liu Ryan didn't know, but suddenly, she shot up from her seat. Under the confused gazes of those around her, she turned and rushed out in a panic. She had made up her mind. She would go home, tell He Kong she loved him, pretend none of this had ever happened. She would continue pretending to be sick. She would keep up the lie. She would make sure He Kong never knew the truth, so he would continue loving her blindly. In the next moment, she crashed directly into a waiter. Startled by her dark expression, the waiter flinched, then quickly held up a small paper bag, his hands trembling. Miss Liu, this is from He Kong. He said I must give it to you personally. Liu Ryan froze. How the hell did that kid know you were here? When did he figure out your real identity? This is some Mission Impossible level stuff. Hurry, check what he sent you. Just a heads up, I get dizzy at the sight of blood. Amidst the rising commotion, Liu Ryan's eyelid twitched. A sudden ominous feeling gripped her. Her fingers hesitated for a moment. Then she carefully peeled back the edge of the paper bag. Everyone around her froze. Inside, stacked neatly, were rows upon rows of medicine boxes. Resting on top, a small note with just a few sharp, forceful words. I won't let you in. In that instant, Liu Ryan suddenly understood why He Kong had cried in his sleep that night. Why he had asked her that question after waking up. He had known the truth all along, and he had given her a chance to come clean. The medicine boxes in her grip crumpled, a sharp, crushing sound echoing through the room. Liu Ryan instinctively pulled out her phone, her fingers fumbling to dial He Kong's number. But before she could press call, her phone rang first. An unknown number. Liu Ryan, caught between hope and dread, answered. Hello! On the other end, a lazy, almost amused male voice spoke. Liu Ryan, correct? I'm a reporter from Entertainment Plus Plus. Would you care to comment on the video that's been leaked online? Many are saying you toyed with a young man's feelings. Liu Ryan went stiff. At that moment, gas erupted around her. Someone beside her shoved their phone toward her face. On the screen, the top trending news. An anonymous leaked video. Ryan, if your little boyfriend finds out the truth, he's probably going to hate you to death. Would He Kong hate me? Does it even matter? Watching him run around all day, earning money for my medicine, it's so amusing. Liu Ryan's face was clearly visible in the video. It was from that night. The night she and her friends laughed about using He Kong. About the bet. The internet had exploded. Holy shit! This woman is beyond disgusting. Wait, isn't that the top student from our department? Yeah, he's the one with amazing grades, but always seemed obsessed with making money. We always wondered why. He kept winning scholarships. So where the hell was his money going? Turns out, he was spending it all on his garbage of a girlfriend. See that, guys? This is why being a nice guy
Never let a
will ruin
woman
your
control
life.
you.
You should be the one controlling them. Bro, listen to me. The voices kept piling on. Liu, miss, are you still there? On the other end of the line, the reporter's voice kept droning on, but Liu Ryan gripped her phone, her mind filled with an overwhelming buzzing noise. She knew. It was all over. She had never expected that someone as gentle as he Kong could one day strike back so mercilessly. Only after stepping out from beneath the umbrella named Liu Ryan did I realize that the world outside was clear skies, endless and bright. There had never been any rain. Far away in a foreign land, carrying the expectations of my professor, I threw myself wholeheartedly into cardiovascular research at the lab. Another year passed and the new year arrived again. After finishing up my latest batch of data analysis, I finally logged into my domestic social media for the first time in ages and caught up with some friends. I received a call from my senior. He told me he had now stayed on as a teaching assistant at our university, bringing up the past. He let out a sigh. If I hadn't seen the video with my own eyes, I never would have believed that the Liu family's heiress would do something so vile. He also told me, although the Liu family had quickly paid to suppress the trending topic, they couldn't stop their company stock from plummeting for months. And Liu Ryan, marked by disgrace, became an outcast. Both the public and the elite social circles refused to associate with her. He Kong, did you know? Back then, we all thought you'd gotten into gambling or drinking. That's why you were always running short on money. Who the hell knew? You were just a fool in love, spending every penny on that wretched woman. My senior sighed in exasperation. But honestly, I never imagined you'd pull off such a god-tier revenge plan in total silence. That Liu girl, she must regret ever crossing you. He paused, then hesitated as if debating whether to say more. After a moment, he waved it off with a laugh. Forget it. It's the new year. Let's not bring up old nightmares. I chuckled, nodded, and didn't ask any further. We chatted for a long time. Then, when my senior learned my research focus was on cardiovascular medicine, he went quiet for a moment. Is it because of Liu Ryan? He hesitantly asked. Do you still hate her? I shook my head. Liu Ryan's heart disease was fake, but the pain and despair I felt because I couldn't afford the medicine was real. Because of Liu Ryan, I ended up stumbling into a deeper understanding of heart disease, of the suffering it brings. I want to use my knowledge to help real patients to freely and joyfully explore the beauty of this world. I also didn't want other families of heart disease patients to experience the same helpless despair I felt back then when I couldn't afford the outrageous price of imported medicine. After completing my PhD, I returned home as promised. With Shen Wanqing's recommendation, I continued my research into cardiovascular medicine. One day, I checked my finances and realized that after stopping spending money on women, I had saved up an astonishing amount. So I took a large portion of it and started funding treatments for children from impoverished families who suffered from severe illnesses. My senior sighed and called me a fool. You've already been deceived once. How are you still this naive? How do you know these kids' parents aren't just using them for sympathy? Milking donations like a business? I shook my head and said honestly, the human heart is unpredictable, ever-changing. Maybe out of the 10 children I help, only one will truly remember the kindness. But I believe someone will carry it forward. I smiled, feeling at peace. That is enough. The world is vast, and I thought I would never cross paths with Liu Ryan again. But years later, my team successfully developed a new cardiovascular drug. We needed our first clinical trial patient. If this medication proved effective, it could save countless lives. Many patients desperately hoped for the trial's success. Originally, our trial participant was chosen by lottery. A little girl had been selected. She was only 4 years old, with tiny braided pigtails. During her medical checkups, she always clutched a stuffed doll. Sitting quietly on the blue chairs in the hallway, whenever we looked at her, she would tilt her head up, flash a bright, innocent smile. Each time I saw her, something in my chest softened, but unexpectedly. On the day of the trial, the project leader hesitated, then told me the patient had been replaced. I froze, then quickly understood. Some powerful sponsor had stepped in and swapped in one of their own people. A series of heavy, adult footsteps echoed in the corridor. Someone was coming. It had to be the new trial participant. I frowned, lifting my head, only to be completely stunned. Walking through the doorway was Liu Ryan. Years had passed, but there was now a faint sorrow between her brows. Long time no see. He Kong. Liu Ryan stood before me, quietly gazing into my eyes. Her deep, dark pupils reflected the cold, sterile white light of the lab, flickering between brightness and shadow, as if suppressing some intense emotion. It's true, when people are at a loss for words, they really do laugh. I was so infuriated I actually laughed out loud. Liu Ryan, do you have some kind of mental illness? Are you addicted to pretending to be sick? Or do you just enjoy swallowing pills like they're candy? This is a matter of life and death. Can you stop messing around here? Without waiting for her response, I pressed the emergency call button on my desk, intending to have security escort her out. No, I'm not lying this time. Liu Ryan looked at me, her voice hoarse, pleading. This time it's real. I really am sick. I know the drug you and your team developed is effective. I lowered my gaze and scanned through her medical report. For the first time, Liu Ryan wasn't lying. Her heart disease was real. It was caused by complications from a car accident, and the date of that accident. I stared at it, disbelieving. It was the day I left the country. Liu Ryan must have noticed the subtle hesitation in my expression. She immediately explained, her tone urgent. That night, I looked up your flight. I was on my way to the airport to stop you, but on the way, I ran into paparazzi. They were chasing after some celebrity scandal, blocking the road. I tried to speed past them to get to you. I was driving too fast on the overpass. And then, I crashed. I was seriously injured. Ever since then, my heart hasn't been the same. Suddenly, I understood why my senior had hesitated that day. Why he had held back his words. I couldn't help but chuckle. Bye. Liu Ryan let out a bitter laugh. Yeah. Bye. I never imagined that actually having heart disease would be this unbearable. I can't breathe properly most of the time. I can't run, I can't jump freely anymore. Even my MYL levels are steadily declining. She kept rambling, trying to gauge my reaction, but my expression remained indifferent, unmoved. When she realized that emotional appeals wouldn't work, she switched tactics. He Kong, listen to me. I am far more important than that little girl. If you let me be the first to undergo the trial, if the treatment is successful. She paused, as if convinced I would agree. Then she slowly enunciated each word. I will personally donate 50 million yuan every year to fund your research. I finally smiled, because I seriously shook my head at her. Liu Ryan, you always think that people will covet your wealth and power. You believe that because you have what ordinary people don't, you are somehow superior. You think you can look down on the world from above. But to me, everything you own is nothing more than a pile of worthless paper. In the face of medicine, every life is equal. Miss Liu, please leave. As Liu Ryan was escorted out of the lab, I kindly gave her a piece of advice. If you need medication, you can always go back to that special imported drug I used to buy for you. Now you don't have to pretend anymore. No need to figure out how to dispose of the pills without me noticing. How wonderful, isn't it? Liu Ryan, you finally have heart disease. Now you can take as many Pills as you want. Under the strong insistence of my team, the little girl was rightfully given the first dose of the new drug. After 6 months of observation, her condition significantly improved. She recovered beautifully. Her cheeks grew rosy again. She could take walks outside by herself and laugh freely with children her age. On her final checkup, she looked up at me and said, "Big brother, when I grow up, I want to be a doctor too. I want to help others just like you." I gently tapped her nose and smiled. "That's a great dream. Go for it." Years passed. The new drug was finally released to the market. My team and I gained widespread recognition, and I was invited back to my alma mater to give a speech. The hall was packed with people, the applause deafening. During the open Q&A, a playful student raised their hand. "Senior, did you ever have a campus romance back in your university days?" I smiled. "Yeah." Her name was Liu Ryan. She was a beautiful girl. I really liked her back then. As I briefly summarized the chapter of my life, I realized I could now talk about it without bitterness, without regret. Someone then asked, "What happened after that?" I chuckled. She lied to me. So we broke up. A few students sighed in pity. Then a hesitant female voice asked, "Senior, did you ever think about getting back together?" I smiled. Then with absolute certainty, I said, "Of course not. I have studies to focus on. I have work to do. I have far greater things waiting for me to accomplish. If I waste my time and energy entangling myself with someone who isn't worth it, she doesn't deserve it." The best way to honor the past is to never look back and to keep running forward.